Nossa próxima palestrante vem lá da Inglaterra. Ela é diretora de projetos de uma empresa chamada Ímpetus Consultoria. É uma empresa inglesa especializada em energia sustentável, eficiência energética e energias renováveis. Então, ela vai dar o ponto de vista dela de energia, do ponto de vista lá do UK, lá da Inglaterra. Tá? Ela vai falar em inglês, vocês vão escutar em português. Aí depois, na hora das perguntas e respostas, vocês podem fazer as perguntas em português, que ela responde, vai ter tradução. Tá bom?
Thank you very much for having me here today. I'm going to talk about energy use in the UK. Okay, the way we use energy today is totally different from the way we used energy 200 years ago. It's also quite different from how we used energy just 30 or 40 years ago. These changes have been shaped by historical events like the Industrial Revolution, and they continue to be altered by socio-economic and social and cultural trends. Our energy use brings benefits, but it also brings social and environmental problems. What I'm going to talk about today is all of these things and look at how we're tackling the problems and whether or not you can have the benefits without the problems. Between about 1760 and 1830 was a period known as the Industrial Revolution. It started in Great Britain and eventually spread throughout Europe to North America and eventually to the rest of the world. There were huge changes in some of the industries, the manufacturing, agriculture and in transportation. And this had an effect on the socio-economic and cultural conditions in Britain. Before the Industrial Revolution, in the UK, our economy was based on manual labour. But through the Industrial Revolution, it changed to machine-based manufacturing. It started with the mechanisation of the textile industry and the development of iron-making techniques, and it led to the increased use of refined coal. It also saw the development of all-metal machine tools, which meant that we could use these to build other machines for using in manufacturing in other industries. Later on in the Industrial Revolution saw the development of the internal combustion engine and electrical power generation. One of the massive changes was the replacement of organic fuels based on wood with fossil fuels based on coal. During the Industrial Revolution as well, communication links, both physical, so things like transport, and verbal or visual, so like photography or telephones, were either invented or they became more prevalent. At the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, most goods were transported either on land or by sea, but they were driven by animals or wind power using sails. The Industrial Revolution improved our transport infrastructure with the development of a road network, canal and waterway network and a railway network. And this meant that raw materials and the finished products could be moved faster and cheaper, and new ideas could also spread more quickly. Industrialisation led to the creation of factories, which in turn led to the rise of modern cities. This is because workers migrated from the countryside to where the factories were based and set up in these cities. During this time in London, we saw the creation of the sewage system, water supply network was expanded and improved, but possibly most importantly, gas reticulation came into play, which meant that there was lighting and heating available throughout London. The first gas lighting utilities was established in London and became one of the major consumers of coal in the UK. This has a social and industrial impact because the factories and the shops could stay open longer because they were being lit. It also meant that nightlife in cities and towns could flourish because they could light the streets and the interiors of homes. So you can see that the Industrial Revolution led to a lot of benefits. We could produce more things, we could move about more and communicate more, but it also had a huge impact on energy and obviously carbon dioxide emissions. We were using a lot more energy than before, and a lot more of it was fuelled by fossil fuels, which obviously produce more carbon dioxide. There have been changes in recent history as well, though. Overall, you can see that the average energy use has stayed the same, but it's been a change in the use of fuels that we get our energy from. You can see that the first change was between 1970 to 1980, where there was a big increase in the amount of gas. The reason for this was the introduction of central heating. In the UK, because the weather gets cold, we have to have central heating to heat our homes. It used to be that we had open fires where we'd burn coal or wood, or we'd have standalone electric heaters, so just an electric heater. And the electricity for those was generally coming from coal or oil-fired power stations. But the introduction of central heating, this was fueled by gas, so it reduced the amount of carbon emissions. Basically, you have a central boiler where the water is heated by the gas, and this is then transported around the house in a network of pipes and radiators to give heat to the house. The next change was in the 1990s. You can see another expansion in terms of the amount of gas we used, and that was because of the privatisation of the coal, electric and gas boards. Laws were introduced that increased the competition, and also there was the availability of cheap gas from the North Sea, which is the sea around the east and north coast of Britain. This caused what was known as the dash for gas, during which coal use in the UK reduced, and a lot more of the electricity was being produced from gas rather than coal. In 1990, just over 1% of all of the gas. We're just beginning to use renewable energy technologies. It's a very small amount. This graph shows how we're using the energy, who's using the energy that we're producing or importing. You can see over time, from 1970 through to the present day, that energy use by industry has been decreasing. This is because we're seeing deindustrialisation in the UK. We're moving to a service economy. And this generally tends to reduce the country's energy use and carbon emissions. Transport is the pink line, and you can see that that's increasing. We're generally becoming more mobile, and I'll talk more about transport a bit later. If you look at these, the other two lines, yellow is residential use, and the blue one is other, so businesses, things like that. You can see that, well, perhaps for the future, all we really need to worry about is transport, because that's the only one that's increasing. The others have stayed the same, even though, you know, we're increasing in number of people. But it's deceptive. Basically, the others, and the residential and the others, have stayed level because of efficiencies in the supply side. Basically, the technologies for electricity production have become more and more efficient, and that's not likely to happen again, so we do still have a problem. In order to understand how we can reduce our energy use, we need to understand what shapes our decisions around how and why we use energy. And there are three key ones, and I'll go through each of these in turn. Economic drivers, social drivers, and obviously environmental drivers.